Hello and welcome to another episode. Today is Wednesday of the second week of the sprint because I'm going to be out of town later on, but even with the shortened sprint, I was able to get a bunch of awesome systems into the game that are really going to be game-changing. I'm excited about these, so let's just jump in and look at what I got done. Alright, so as always, let's start with the all-important Trello board. So here's what I've gotten done these past 2 weeks, a little bit of art, and then a few systems. Again, it may not look like much, just like last week, but because of this word system, whenever you see this system on any of the tasks I'm doing, that means it's a big underlying structure that's going to make my work in the future for the game a whole lot easier. So these are big tasks that I've accomplished, and so this is a whole lot of work right here. So the first thing I worked on in the first week of this sprint was making better visuals. All of these, I want to clarify, are just stand-in images that are not going to be part of the ultimate product, but they make it a little better on my eyes, it makes it more interesting for you, and it makes a better thumbnail for YouTube. So I worked on that, again, just stand-in art, and then I moved on to this item management system, which includes items, item management, of course, and then an inventory system. All of this is bare bones right now, and I want to make it as flexible for whatever direction I want to go in. I don't really know how items are going to work in the game yet, nor do I know how inventory management or the inventory system will work, so I want it to be as flexible as possible, and so that's what I've tried to implement here. These are the two pieces that I worked on this sprint, making better visuals and item management system, the two pieces I worked on for the first week of this sprint. And so let's hop over to Unity and see what that looks like. So right off the bat, you can see the better visuals are so much better. We're not dealing with little boxes anymore. We've got a little building up here, art piece that I made just for fun a little while ago and is now serving a purpose right now. And then three little characters, the vendor, the player, and then some knight over here. It just makes it better. And then a little apple box that we'll look at in a minute. If I hit play, we can take a look at this in a bit more detail. You can see I can still move around, no animations are implemented, but this house has the whole Y sorting that I talked about in last game. And you'll see this vendor, she's still exactly as we knew her before, she just looks different. And now the big thing you can see is I've got an inventory that's not just text anymore, but it looks a little better. Again, everything you see here is stand-in representations of the systems, but it's super important and just looks cleaner. So, big thing, first of all, we can see that talking to her works the same way, and we can save her data there, but we can also get apples from this box right here by walking up and pressing Q. And we can eat these apples by clicking on them, and they disappear from our inventory. And then, so we can get some more, can eat some more, and then this is all connected to the save system, so if I hit the save button, restart the game, because now that we've saved it and the data is saved into the game, we actually have something that is useful that's getting saved into our game, the 3 apples that we still have, and this will change in between sessions. So this was a little example of how my saving feature is working throughout the game, and this is the big piece of the puzzle that I worked on for this first week. Let's go over to code just to see what's going on here. So this is going to be kind of overwhelming, lots of code here if you don't know programming, but I'll try to keep it pretty simple. So we've got this folder right here, item management. You can see there's consumable, inventory, inventory slots, and items. If I open up items, basically what we have that we're storing in here is a few different variables that every item in the game is going to have, such as an ID, a unique ID that the computer recognizes the item as, a title, a human readable title that we recognize the item as, a description, which is exactly what it sounds like, an image of the icon, and then some stats. Stats aren't really implemented so much here, the statistics of the items, but we've just put it in there because maybe they'll be used later, who knows. So every item is this kind of thing, and every item is a scriptable object, which basically means it's a game object that doesn't have to just exist in the game, but I can play around with it inside Unity. The graph, the dialog graph that I showed you in the last video is also a scriptable object, not existing inside the game, existing inside of Unity. So here we got our item, it's a scriptable object, but then we also have a specific type of item, these consumables, which extends item right here. And beyond the statistics that we have for a normal item, we also include this heal feature. And then we give it an ID consumable. So we can really easily build off of this item class, create new different types like weapon item or, I don't know, helmet items, any type of item we want to, and we can just extend from this item class. So if we go back to Unity, if that was really confusing, ultimately what it boils down to is we can create items like this. So I created a new consumable, and then I can see the different features over here. I can give it an ID, such as the one right here, consumable apple. I can give it a name, apple, description, a tasty red apple, icon right here, and then it can heal 5 once that were implemented. Most of these are not being used, but you can even see in this really simple implementation of the game, we already have certain parts being used. That icon, that temp apple icon, is being used in the game for this image in the inventory. And so is the title right here. Apple is being displayed right there. If I change that to cat, it would say cat here. I don't know where I'm going to go with the item system in the future. That's something I need to really start fleshing out fairly soon. But this is the groundwork, so that I can just create a new type of item right here, fill out its data over here, and then it can be implemented to the game, swapped out for different stuff. If I created a tangerine, I could make you pick up tangerines from this box without having to change any of the underlying code going into the game. So that's what I've gotten done this first week. Now let's jump into the second week, the shorter week, where I worked on the dialogue system, implementing that actually into the game. Okay, so I just literally discovered that my game is controller compatible. I mean, I've been using the built-in system inside of Unity to do controls, and hadn't thought about it, but it already works with a controller. I've been using a keyboard. Just cool fact. Okay, so second week was the Dialog Controller, like I said, and I've made huge strides on this. So if we go over to the Dialog Controller, remember last week I can click on these different nodes and it will come up down here. So here's a dialogue, and it's fleshed out. So as you can read it right here, this the character says, or I'll read it if you can't see it, "Welcome, how are you?" And then you've got two different responses, "Fine, thanks, how are you? I'm good." And so it branches out, the conversation branches out from there. And I'm just writing these in. The character responds with the words down here, and then you've got these options. And I can add choices, I can remove choices. This is similar to what we saw previously, but just a little bit more fleshed out. And then one thing I've added here is these end nodes right here. So basically how the end nodes work is once a conversation ends, and you'll see it in a bit, the character that you're talking to will say some passing comment if it's been set. So they may say, "Have a nice time in town," or "I'll see you around," or whatever. Just some passing statement as you walk away. But there will be one for default, but throughout the conversation, another last word may make more sense. So for instance, this is the conversation with the guard that you'd be talking to, and he may just say something like, "See you later." But if you ask him how he's doing and then leave, he'll be a little bit more kind. So he'll say, "Enjoy your stay." And then if you ask about the orc raids, his response will be, "Stay safe." So this is a way that I can create the conversations, create the personalities to be a little bit more dynamic and respond to how you've been interacting with the players. If you remember a couple weeks ago, this wasn't implemented into the game yet. It was just sort of a proof of concept. But now, if I go ahead and hit play, and I'll leave the controller off to the side, mouse and keyboard is more implemented right now. If I walk over to this guy and hit E, you can see this really ugly menu comes up. Again, just placeholder. And it has the conversation that we've been seeing. "Welcome, how are you?" And I can leave. I can say, "I'm good, fine, thanks, how are you?" If I go ahead and say, "Fine, thanks, how are you?" then we go through the conversation. "Any luck with the orc raids?" And remember, I asked him how he's doing, so he's a little bit more happy. So if I hit leave, he'll say, "Enjoy your stay," in a cheerful attitude. That last stay comment, remember, changes throughout the game. So if I come back up here and say, "Any luck with the orc raids?" he'll respond, and then I leave and he says, "Stay safe." This is really exciting because there's so much more I can do with this. I can create a bunch of different types of nodes here. I can maybe make some loot box esque nodes where a character will give a specific item and I can have a drop down of the different items that exist in the game. And so I could just drop a loot node in here and the character will give you an item throughout the conversation. This is just going to make it so I can do tons, hundreds or thousands of unique conversations in the game with tons of customization, and it feels lifelike, but it doesn't require a lot of work on my end. And once I've edited this, I can just save it and it's in the game forever. That's the big thing I worked on this week. There are a few other minor tweaks. One that's worth mentioning is how the camera works. Making cameras work properly in a game can be really difficult, especially because I want this game to be immersive, but 2D top-down view or 45-degree angle view. And so you can't really see much. You can't see if there's buildings above the character. You can't see if there's buildings below. So one thing I've done, and right now it's subtle, I may play with this a bit more, I've made it so that the camera tends towards showing you more of what's in front of you than what's behind you. You see, I'll start walking down in this direction, but you see it pans so I can see in the direction the character's going. I'm way up here, but it'll pan. And that's just a bit more of realism. I should be able to see what I'm walking towards more than what's behind me. And then also, working with pixel art can be a little tricky because I want it to be pixel perfect. I want it to feel like one of those old games, and yet still be able to move smoothly and everything. So one thing I've added to the main camera is down here a pixel perfect camera, and that just makes sure that it cleans up any jagged edges that you would usually see. If I turn this off, actually, if we come into game, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but like right here, this character's eye is a little bit bigger than this one. That's just because the game is having a hard time making it absolutely perfect. You wouldn't notice that if it wasn't a pixelated game, but you do definitely notice it otherwise. So I'm just going to turn that back on, and you're not going to see that in the game. That's what I was able to implement this week. Just a couple seemingly small things, but it's really going to help me down the road, and I'm really excited to flesh out this dialogue graph in the future. Alright, so that's another sprint in the bag. Up next, I'm going to start working on implementing animations into the game, and I may even start working on the art concept for the game, figuring out the pixel density, and I may have some prototypes for you in a couple weeks. That's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.